Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation around how to become an architect and the architect's profession generally, and how to study in UK or Newcastle specifically. Just a second, I just need to make sure we have the, okay. So I'd introduce myself as briefly as possible. I'm an architect by profession. I practiced 25 years in Germany and in UK. I originally studied in Stuttgart. I had two special fields. One is educational architecture and the other one is sustainable architecture. My career diverted into teaching about 12 years ago, slowly but steady, more and more. And I developed the courses for international, into Newcastle University. What you see here is our lecture theater. And in fact, these are all our students on our programs. I apologize for the Russian writing. I haven't had the time to adjust the native language. Anyhow, it says enough. What you see here is one of my latest larger projects as a practicing architect, and it tells a lot about what architecture is about. Commonly, when students apply, they have a perception that it is about buildings, specific buildings. And when you look at portfolios, very often you see that students try to somehow produce one house, or they draw a skyscraper or an individual building. However, architecture is never about a building. It is always about context. And this is what makes this profession so exciting and interesting, because it is somewhere in between science, somewhere in between art, somewhere in between engineering. And we all relate to architecture every single day. We are in something which is a part of architecture. And what we see here is a school design in the Newcastle region. And the task was to redevelop secondary school with a sixth form. And the big discussion was whether we should keep this old building or not. And when you look at it, I think it would be quite easy to say we all agree that it was a shame to get rid of such an interesting building. And it is, in view to its form, organization, also an interesting building. However, you get across these questions very often. And what this picture demonstrates is that architecture is in fact something which relates to the past, which attempts to interpret into the future, and which also shows a respect to the past. So what you see is the new build is very different on the one hand, but at the same time, in view to the volume, in view to the height, in view to the rhythm, it tries to respond to the building. I'm not going any deeper into it. So we could define architecture as a journey, as a boulevard, as it is here. That was the concept was an educational boulevard, where you, on the one hand, you have the historical part, on the other hand, you have the part which hints into the future. And this image encapsulates many aspects of how we teach architecture. So it is a lot about context. And when I emphasize this relates also to the portfolio. Now I jump ahead. I don't stick to every single slide. This is just a few more images of the school design. Then a slide about Newcastle. I made something about Newcastle a little bit later. Here are, in fact, a few students from Indonesia. One of my favorite is this one. And Andreas, a very good student. I think there are 4 or 5 from your region. That's a while ago, they graduated 2 years ago. And as you can see, there were many reasons to celebrate. So they did all well on our program. So what makes, I'm talking first about the portfolio before we go in the detail of the architecture, the structure of the architecture education in United Kingdom or in England specifically. So these are questions you should ask when you start producing a portfolio. How can I make a portfolio interesting? If you think about design, and you don't need to be an architect or a designer to go through these considerations, one question is, how can I make it interesting? How can I design a portfolio which is memorable, which somehow is different to other portfolios? So that is a key question, how to make it relevant. So this is relating more to the practical side. So what would be relevant for architecture? And this is potentially different to what you expect. I already make a comment before I possibly forget it. So how to make a portfolio relevant? Obviously, both questions are related. One misunderstanding is, as I already said, that students try to focus very much just on a building, a house, a certain piece of architecture. However, what is relevant for architecture is everything which has to do with design. So we encourage always, if students produce a portfolio for a foundation program or for the first year, to be really open and to convey and to show their real interest, whether that is fashion design, whether they experimented with sculpturing, whether they did anything creative, and that does not necessarily need to be architectural. So it can be quite broad. What about the content, what is important, and how to stand out? So they are all related. The last question is an interesting one. So what should not be in a portfolio? Now, what you see very often, and I've got a collection of sample portfolios. So what should not be in a portfolio? And generally, I would say most times photography is what is better not to be in a portfolio. The reason is very obvious. With mobile phones, with the technology we have, you already can make very impressive pictures quite easily. So it does not tell much about your true qualities, your manual skills. There may be the odd exception, but generally I would advise that, and there are universities which clearly state that in their portfolio guidance that they don't want and don't encourage photography. So I think that I do not want to talk about each slide very long. This is a slide which tells a story. And this is one key aspect of a good portfolio. And that is that it tells a story about the applicant, about the candidate, that we can get to know the personality. So a kind of a window as we see it in this kind of computer animation. So in a career in design, generally the portfolio is always the door opener. Now for international students, that's important to know. So as I'm leading the Into architecture program for Newcastle, there's nothing more important than the portfolio. We have sometimes borderline cases where students don't quite meet the requirements, for example, for maths or for on the academic side, so just close, but a little bit below. However, the portfolio is what is always the game changer. So if the portfolio demonstrates that there is skill, then this will change. So these are the headings we have on this talk. As I said, I don't want to dwell too much on a single picture. So the perception of a portfolio is like an art gallery. This is an art gallery we regularly visit with our students when things are normal. We are currently conducting a video tour, so students have at least the screen experience. And what a good portfolio does, it sets the scene so that the artwork, that the work stands out. I'll show you a few examples later where students try to make it graphically very impressive. So almost like an advertising brochure. This is not how a portfolio should be like. It's more neutral, step back, so the artwork can shine. There's one word in it, and that is curated. That means basically, like an art exhibition, you carefully think about how you organize your presentation. Here are a few negative examples. With a starting page, students often try very hard to make it impressive. By doing so, it goes a bit in a strange direction. I don't want to comment too much on it. So what is a portfolio not? It is surely not a brochure, and it is also not only a technical prospect which shows, in this case, architectural detail. So the purpose of a portfolio is that you can convince the receiver. And as in many things, you need to understand the mechanics of the receiver, what the receiver would like to see. And this is interesting. I'm by background a practicing architect, and I employed architects in my own company and in other companies. However, I'm also the one who is the selector for the portfolios for the Into Architecture programs. So what is needed is different to the profession. So now an educator wants to see a portfolio where you see opportunities for development. And that's the reason why I say students, it's very good when candidates show that they have a wide range of things which they are interested in, that they dare to risk something, you know, that they experiment, that they are not narrow, that they are open. And this is very different to what you would need for applying for a job where you want to see perfect skills. So the open-endedness of a portfolio is an important thing. As more limited as students present him or herself, as more difficult it will be to get into a program. So what it does basically, your portfolio represents you. It speaks for you. And in my own career, I must say, I would not say that I was always very successful with each and everything. And the career as an architect is quite varied, you know, as life is, you know. But at the same time, the portfolios I had were always key openers. And I managed in these years, now meanwhile more than 30 years, always to get where I wanted with my portfolio. I move on. Who is the receiver? I talked about this. So for an university portfolio, it's mainly academics, tutors, and professors. And in the professional world, you would face architects who have a different perspective. So I just emphasize a few of these things. What you see here is engagement with development work. And you see here some models standing around. And it is a great idea, not just to sketch and draw. So very often I receive portfolios which only focus on sketching or drawing. However, architecture is three-dimensional. Architecture is also experimental. And it is a key skill and a key talent that you have a three-dimensional perception, that you can perceive things in perspective as space. Of course, a beginner will not be trained in it. And a lot, I must say, depends also on the education system. So I must say, over the years I'm doing this course, I can see the influence of education in a country and the culture. You can read why a portfolio looks like that. And some countries, they have advantages in due to their educational systems. Others, they have disadvantages. Very often when countries push towards science, sometimes the art and design side falls a bit short. So the main aspect is scope and creativity. So a demonstration that a person can develop and that there's creativity. I'm not talking about the industry that is a different demand. So when compiling a portfolio, you need to understand that in a standard situation. I've got one colleague at the School of Architecture. He is also a selector for application portfolios. And in good years, he receives more than 1,000 portfolios. I receive per year, possibly 300 or 400 portfolios. And very often you have to decide relatively quickly. So the first impression is very important. That starts with a starting page, but it continues. The second and third page, they are all really very important. So if you look at these two different starting pages, whilst I must say it's not the best starting page. I would not expect such a page for a foundation portfolio. However, it starts telling a story. A female person is looking out on the water. We have an interesting shadow cast. We've got an interesting texture, which looks like casted concrete. Now, in comparison, you've got this portfolio title page, which doesn't tell anything. So it demonstrates very clearly that when I see a portfolio which only says portfolio, that this might not necessarily be that interesting. We have a different starting page with this one. I give you a moment to carefully look at it and to decide what you would do with it if you were in my shoes, if you would look at such a portfolio starting page. Now, how you could interpret it is, I expect somebody who is very crafty, very engaged, who does many things by hand, and who is not afraid of using color. So in comparison to this one, this shows a lot of promise right on the first page. I'm not talking about this one. This is an already fully developed architectural portfolio. And here we have a portfolio which is also interesting because it says only the Chinese word for architecture and kind of yin and yang in it. So we just open the portfolio from a student who produced the portfolio with the hand. And we've got a nice content sheet. When I show you these samples, you know, they are aiming at a high standard. And I want to make clear, this is not what we are looking for application portfolio. So this is already somebody who has study experience. Anyhow, it shows the principles of it. So a good idea is always a contents page and any kind of practical experience. This is this portfolio from the guy with the colored hand. Practical experience is of very high value. It is sometimes difficult for young people when they come from school or so to demonstrate that they had some engagement. And I also see that it is sometimes difficult, you know, to have such opportunities that you can do things in real life. However, as part of this journey and the story of a successful portfolio, such experience are of very high value. I tell you about myself, you know, my way to architecture was not straight. I did the German Abitur equivalent to A-level. Then I was unsure what I wanted to do. I intended to become a graphic designer. My parents had an architecture firm and an art gallery. However, personal circumstances, I don't go into the detail, held me back. So I didn't get into a study place. I worked in a factory for 1.5 years. Then I made a shoemaker apprenticeship. I tried various things, and sometimes you think, oh, so much lost time and so much testing and trying. In hindsight, I must say I'm very grateful that I tested and tried. These are valuable experiences. So if a young person has an opportunity of any kind of engagement in real life and documents it and includes it in a portfolio, that can be a real very good idea, because it shows experiences beyond, and very often it shows a lot about the person, and so it gives us a good understanding what kind of personality we have in front of us. I think I skipped this one. Very confident portfolio pages here, but these are already people who studied. This is Alan Chong, a student who was on our foundation program. A student we were very proud of because he did win the RIBA President Medal, which is for a student one of the highest awards. You can apply internationally for it. And so to achieve such a level is a very good standard. Not talking about this one here, a few more images of this portfolio of the guy who engaged a lot in practical work. So this is almost carpentry, what he does, joinery, craftsmanship, and this is wonderful to see. You know, we are living in a strange time, which forces us so much into electronic tools, and they have many positives. However, electronic tools, the computer and CAD programs, you know, the programs where you make wonderful 3D models and you can twist and turn them around, they are all good, but it's not the real thing. The real thing is if you take things in your hand and you're doing it by hand. And the architecture education is in this respect still very much hands-on. When I conduct a student session, and I showed it to Ibrahim before, it is practical. I have my camera on my desk and my students can see me sketching, and when I go in the breakout spaces, I see them in practical engagement. This is about how to demonstrate certain skills. I talked mainly about the portfolio towards undergraduate level. What we see here is already aiming to a higher level. So we have, on my course, we have 3 pathways. It's a foundation, a first year, and a graduate diploma, pre-masters. And if you would apply for the pre-masters, such a very good rendering is how you can demonstrate skills. So to bring the skill set together, what is necessary to show? Very often when I give my comments on a portfolio, I talk about the skill profile. And everyone has a range of skills. You know, you may be good with crafting or sculpting. Some students are good with painting. Some students are good with sketching and demonstrating. Others are good with model making. Others are also good with researching, you know, with exploring and trying to understand contexts. So there's a broad range. However, as you would expect for architecture, sketching, drawing, and anything related to artistic skills, to art and design, they are absolutely relevant and imperative. So if in a portfolio there's only one skill, then the skill profile can fall short. Not necessarily. I'll show you a few examples in a few moments. Technical skills, these are skills which are very controlled. They are not so important if you apply for foundation or for a first year. If you apply for a higher level, then they become more important. Still, it is a good idea to have a demonstration of them. If you apply for a first year, to show that you can understand scaled drawing, that you can make precise drawings which show true measures, can be a good idea. I would not say that it is a necessity. So the design skills or design related skills are the top priority. This is a secondary priority. And the third one is IT skills. They are, from my perspective, the ones which are the least important, because from my experience, young people pick these up so easily and quickly that I don't need to worry about it. You know, the generations today, they were all grown up with IT, with the internet. Other to myself, you know, when I studied, there was no CAD drawing. It was all by hand. And when I wrote my essays, I wrote them on an old typewriter, even a mechanical typewriter. So that changed a lot. So young persons very quickly get the hang of IT skills in average. So that's the reason why they are the least important skill and do not necessarily need to be demonstrated. This is an overarching skill, communication. And this is what I talked about at the beginning, that you set the stage for your work, that your work is readable. I must say, to be the selector for portfolios is really very interesting. It trains my own skill in reading graphical work. And you paint a picture. You can paint a picture of the person. So you get an understanding what kind of personality is it you are investigating and who applied. So having this skill to produce a good portfolio where the story comes out is important, but it is not everything. I leave this one aside. This is targeting mainly graduate diploma. So this is what you need when you start aiming for architecture. The most important is the design related skill. And secondly, these ones under the umbrella of good communication. Yeah, now the micro is switched off. Okay, let's carry on. So this aims now in a completely different direction. This aims at a master degree level. So that would expect that there's already experience and that there is a much stronger knowledge base. So when students are studying, they are also encouraged in their portfolio to include academic work. So for example, short essays, short research projects, And architecture is a subject which is always based on exploration. Research always sounds so big, you know, it sounds so very scientific. If you start a building, you are doing a so-called site analysis, and that is where you collect all information about the surrounding buildings, about the topography, about the ground conditions, about traffic and infrastructure, and so on. And this is basically a form of research. This is important when you go for a master degree. I stop here to explain this because I think this is of lesser importance. So here, that just sums up what the most important things are. First impressions counts, creativity and personality, the quality and coherence of materials. Very brief on this one. If you apply it, and that's a general principle, if you apply, you should really select your work carefully and work where you think that does not really convey what you want. It's better you leave it out. I'm not saying you can't include unfinished work. Yes, you can. And to show the story and this openness, it would be silly to attempt that everything is perfect. We are not aiming at perfection. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not about perfection. However, you need to demonstrate that you are able really to produce materials of good quality. So if a portfolio, for example, I show a portfolio in a minute, shows that it's only quick sketching, everything is quick sketching, then I get worried that the candidate only can focus for a short time. So it is a good idea to have pieces of work in a portfolio which demonstrates that you can finish and conclude a longer process. So I don't want to repeat everything which is over here. So it sums up nicely what the key aspects of a successful portfolio are. So there are, we could say, the criteria. What I usually do, I do a marking exercise with candidates or portfolio exercise with potential students so that they can mark a few portfolios. I can't do this in this format, and I won't do this in this format. One other aspect, by the way, you see here some of our students. He was from Singapore. She was one of our best students, and I think it was also, she was from your region. And she actually continued after her first year, not in Newcastle, she continued at the Architects Association in London. So a portfolio is an always unfinished process. So it is for the ones who are listening to this presentation, it is something which you develop constantly. So when I would apply for another job today, I would completely revise my last one, my last portfolio is now about 10 or 11 years old. That is when I actually was asked for doing this job, but I still had to submit a portfolio. So it needs a constant development. It is never really finished, but that is something for later. So it needs regular updates. So this is the end of the portfolio part. And what I do now, I give an opportunity for questions and answers. And secondly, I'm happy to show a few recent samples I received over the last 2-3 weeks. So please feel free to ask any questions.
Oke, thank you Thomas. Buat kalian nih, dari presentasi yang barusan kita sudah sama-sama lihat, apakah ada yang mau ditanyakan? Kalian boleh chat di chat box di bawah atau boleh unmute mic kalian.
Okay, if there might be more questions when I show a few examples or
Yes.
not.
Maybe we can
I
continue again with the examples, and then we can start the
Yeah, that's
question
fine.
and answer session in the last of the presentation.
Okay. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see the screen, your screen.
Good. Okay. Okay. So I'm showing you a portfolio I just recently received for first year. And we have a specific portfolio guidance for foundation and for first year and for graduate diploma. They can be seen on the Into Newcastle University webpage, but I've got them here as well. They are helpful because they encourage to go in the right direction. So this candidate applies for first year in architecture. And I'm not commenting at first, I just scroll it through. So there's a personal statement. It's very long. Contents page. Now, interesting question for you would be, do you accept or not for a first year in architecture at a very good university? So my decision on this one, it is a borderline, but it is a good borderline because there is all evidenced what I just talked about. So when we look at the portrait sketch, it's very systematic. And I would say this is typical Eastern European. So it is a way how you conduct it in the former Soviet Union, influenced by a relatively old-fashioned education, which still clings on to these old skills, you know, that you really understand the geometry of a face or of a head. So this is lovely. With this one, I've got a bit of bellyache, I must say, because there are issues with three-dimensionality. So the perspective is distorted and not correct. The line work, the pencil line work is okay, but it is not very confident. It is a nice composition though. And what this candidate did really well, documented the process. So despite that the outcome is not great, to see that the student or the candidate understands it is about the process and to demonstrate how to get to a result, this is what I greatly enjoy. This is one of these pieces which demonstrate that this candidate is able to accomplish a piece of work. It's a simple drawing. It's not very special. Yet there's a style in it, you know, where you can read the personality to a degree. So it is somebody who can really pay attention to detail. Now, as an architect, you need to be quite a generalist, but you need to have this ability to focus on details. There's a famous architect saying that was one of the great architects of the 20th century who said that God is in the detail. So in the small things is where you can see whether somebody really can do the mastery. And I agree, to bring architecture on a standard that it just not looks nice, that it works up to the last detail, that is the art. Good thing is here, so the student made this practical experience. So I also read through it. I take the time to very quickly read through the comments. So this candidate did a practice period at a real estate agent. These drawings are not great, but I think that it's fine. It tells me that the candidate tried to understand architecture related areas. This is, yeah, possibly the weakest page because it is quite naive how it is conducted. So there are slight issues with the three-dimensionality, yet there are a lot of positives in it as well, because the candidate tried to apply a different skill. So when we flip here, we've already have a demonstration of 3 or 4 skills, which is exactly this range of skills. Once again, a typical exercise, a geometric exercise. This tells me the candidate, once again, can focus and accomplish pieces of work, but the confidence in it is not developed yet. A beginner does not need to be confident, so it's okay. I also enjoy this one, that the candidate demonstrated that it's going beyond, it's going, architecture has to do with our body. And to have this full understanding that human expression entails more than drawing and visuals, but it entails also our physical existence, is once again what I really appreciate in this one. This is the part which I appreciate the least, because I'm not confident that the candidate really understands what that is, and it is all a CAD exercise. So it is difficult to read, what did this candidate really get out of this exercise? And this is the reason why we often advise, keep your hands away from SketchUp, from all these fancy programs. They do not teach you to properly learn your skills. First and foremost, very often we tell students, you don't need a computer and you don't need a laptop. If you advise clients, there's nothing more impressive than if you take out the pencil and demonstrate it by hand, how a building could emerge. Anyhow, it's not wrong. So in this case, if you judge this portfolio on what I said before, on this journey and range of skills, despite that it is a close call for a first year, it is still really acceptable. And in this particular case, this candidate also had a very good academic profile. So the schooling results were very positive. So that is this one. I show you another one. So that was for a first year. I think this is also for a first year. I just go on view full screen. Oops. It went too far, I apologize. That is too quick. So here we start. Yeah, that is also for a first year, and that's now really interesting. I think I comment whilst we go through the slides, otherwise getting too slow for the audience. So I think I very much enjoy the starting page, the contents and so on. the personal picture, yeah, usually we discourage for various reasons, because you don't want to influence a person by your looks. But anyhow, it's absolutely fine if you have a good portrait shot, and if a candidate wants to show the face, that's fine, not an issue. And in this page, in the context of this page, it looks actually pretty coherent and interesting. So now I would expect something about green, about plants, a bit playful potentially. Let's carry on. Now what I see here is a cut drawing and cut renderings, interior cut renderings on a very high level. This already gives me a bit a bellyache. So the first thing I see is not something done by hand or personal. I see something which already needs quite a high level of a developed IT skill. And the problem is sometimes when candidates are already so developed in one specific skill, they can't really go back and train the manual side. So a bit worry with this one. This is a good rendering. We see a very precise drawing. This is once again a cut drawing. And you remember what I said about communication and curating. Remember this picture I showed from this art gallery, which was basically a white background. Now this portfolio is graphically, on the one hand, impressive, but this can deceive. So it's a bit noisy, and to see the true quality in it is not so easy. So the best piece on this page is in fact this little flower, which is very gently done, very carefully done. The proportions are good. All the other pieces are difficult to read. I do not really know how the students has developed it and whether there's a real understanding of it. And it carries on like this. So I don't want to hold you up too long with this particular portfolio. It's going almost in the direction of a technologist. So a technologist, if you start architectural technology, then you need this very precise skills, drawing skills, very technical. And this is what this portfolio appears. So you would potentially think, oh, that's already so much. Isn't that already close to being an architect? But you realize in comparison to the other portfolio, I can't say much about this person. I don't know. There's not enough evidence. So this is a portfolio which I did not accept. And what I usually do, I write a comment that students can resubmit the portfolio. So I give some advice, what could improve, what to show, if it's close enough. I think this candidate could be a good candidate, but it is not evident yet. So that was this one. I've got, just to see, we had a look at this one. Let's take this portfolio. So these are all recent application portfolios. I'm not sure whether that was for foundation or for international year one. The most portfolios at the moment are for international year one, because it's obviously a very interesting course. So we see engagement here with in a practical workshop. It looks really interesting. The image material is not sharp. This is always a worry, you know, if the image quality is so poor. So if you want to demonstrate your practical work, try to get good pictures and not pictures which are pixelated or which are not really sharp. Now you see there's no introduction, there's no contents page. So the storytelling is already limited. This arrangement is a bit strange. You can do that just too easily. So whether it's funny or not, I don't know. So it's a bit a strange one. Then, so we have these two experimental elements, and then suddenly we are confronted with a building in a green field without any comments. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what it means. There is no context at all. Then we've got this technical drawing. It's very precisely done. If there was a comment, it is produced from a floor plan, obviously by hand. That's nice, but I don't know why and what. And it carries on like this. So this is very clearly a portfolio which needs rework, which needs explanation. There is substance there, but this is a portfolio I cannot accept. You understand, this is just not enough story and not enough explained to tell me why this candidate wants to become an architect. Yes, there are elements which are clearly architectural, but you can take such an image out of the internet. So to give this without any explanation makes me rather suspicious. And I honestly must say, occasionally we had portfolios where there were elements in it which clearly were not the students' work. And obviously that's something we are very, very, very alert of it. I think I leave this one that is for graduate diploma. I show you this one, and possibly with this, I think it's now the fourth one, we may leave it. I just have a brief look. What else have we got here? Maybe I show you this one, that's better. So once again, a portfolio for first year. I received this portfolio, I think yesterday. It's simple. I don't bother at the moment about this starting page. I've got a very clear overview. And if you look at the headings, research, mid-final project. So this is a student who already accumulated some experience. And now in comparison to the portfolio you saw before, you see a very interesting exploration about symmetry. All these images are related and try to relate to one another. Symmetry is an interesting question in architecture. If you look at your own face, our faces are not symmetrical, and it gives a very odd expression if you mirror one half of your face. It changes your face quite a lot. So the symmetry is almost a mystery, because true symmetry in nature does not exist. So in nature, nothing is 100% symmetrical. It's always slightly out of the symmetry. So anyhow, this is an interesting exploration, a good application of a range of skills, quite playful. The next one, dome and pen drawing sketches. Once again, you see this storytelling, this exploration, testing things. So I see already on these 2 pages, I already see a good range of skills which are well applied. They are not fantastic, they are not mastery. There are issues, but that is not the point. So it's good enough, and it's carrying on like this. So the exploration is going deep into detail. So it's a bit an expanded project, what we see here. But overall, going on and on, it is very creative. Additionally, you see the junction here, which could be the connection of neurons. And the candidate related this to infrastructure. So I can read it even without explanation. I understand some of the ideas of this candidate. And it is one of these typical things you do, you know, you try to understand the body. And I remember third year BA graduation projects which was about this connection of neurons in your brain and so on. So it is an interesting subject. So once again, this is demonstrating not just development, but it demonstrates what I called exploration or initial research. So the candidate really tries to understand the subject which triggered the creative process. And this is absolutely welcome, an artful and creative interpretation. It is not architecture as such, but it is what makes architecture alive. So this is very enjoyable. And it just continues with very interesting pieces of work. And they show this element of openness, you know, nothing of that is really a final grade, perfect artwork, but it is in a flow. It shows a lot of skill. We have demonstration that this candidate can maintain focus. So overall, this is clearly a portfolio which I welcome. This would be, I would say, in view to the range we saw, we had this borderline portfolio at the beginning, which is a good borderline. So it still passes quite comfortably towards the first year. Now this one is a candidate where I would say I'm keen on getting this candidate onto our program, because good students help other students as well. As better the quality you have in a class, as better the study experience is. So you see, this is a very rich portfolio. And at the end page, and I enjoy also that the student, this is an exercise we ask students to do, you know, to make an exploration of your own room. She put it right at the end. So she realized, in view to the hierarchy, this is of lesser importance, and absolutely fine with me. She did this on a sketch paper. So, but that's all right. You know, I would have preferred to have that really on a clean white sheet, but it's still a decent exercise. I have the feeling this student, this candidate is very keen on getting on the program. So now I talked a lot about portfolios and showed you examples. Now I suggest that you may raise any questions related to portfolios before then I go in the second part. And I don't know, you can use the chat function. If you are able to write it in English, I might be able to read it. So please feel free to ask anything related to preparation towards application.
Oke, thank you Thomas. Buat kalian nih kalau mau nanya-nanya tentang portfolio, tadi ada beberapa sampel kan dikasih lihat. Mungkin kalian mau nanya lebih spesifik, misalnya untuk drawing, sculpture, atau apapun itu yang mungkin kalian juga sekarang itu lagi nyiapin portfolio juga gitu, dan kalian juga mungkin mikirnya ini portfolioku sebenarnya udah bagus atau belum sih? Apa sih sebenarnya yang masih kurang gitu? Kalian bisa tanyakan di chat box ini. Kalau kalian misalnya nggak pede sama bahasa Inggrisnya, nggak apa-apa. Kamu boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia, nanti kita tinggal terjemahin aja.
Okay, while waiting for the question, I can ask the question maybe? Like,
Yeah, sure.
Actually in Indonesia using the national curriculum, so they need to take foundation first, right, Thomas? So is it need make portfolio for the foundation or no?
You need a portfolio for foundation as well. I think it is maybe a bit unfortunate that I didn't show you a foundation portfolio. So the portfolios we saw were all for first year. the portfolio for foundation. Actually, what I do, I just show you the portfolio guidance, which answers your question. Guidance foundation. So this is the portfolio guidance, which is on our web page. And I only go to the practical part. So these are cutouts from foundation application portfolios. So one standard exercise we encourage students to do to make a drawing of their own room, or to make a sketch on the street where they live. So you see the quality here. This is a good quality. So these were students who performed. I know the students behind these cutouts quite well. These are further explorations. So it's ask you, so that is where you live. That is what I do. So if a student, for example, a candidate, had not much art education or had not much to do in school related to it, you can follow this portfolio guidance. So it asks you just to immerse yourself in where you live and somehow try to understand it and depict it as good as you can without photographs. Then the other one is what you do. So somebody loves here shadow boxing. We see here that's from a Chinese student playing on the phone. Whilst I think that's something I do not enjoy necessarily, I always enjoy real things more than anything IT related. Anyhow, this is an excellent sketch, a bit a high level, so we don't expect such a level, I would say. And then we've got somebody using roller skaters. Here you see simple modeling exercises. You just can take by yourself a few matches, a bit of glue, and experiment. What can you do with it? What figures can you produce? How can you make it relevant and interesting? So with simple means, you can achieve a lot. Any kind of painting, graphical work is fine. Then other further drawings, examples. So how can I say it can be playful? For example, this one, you see, this is far from perfect. It's very naive. Absolutely fine. This one is a loose arrangement of objects. So the candidate actually did not necessarily need to demonstrate perfection in understanding the geometries, but the candidate understood that by arranging the geometries, you can make it interesting. So all this stuff is really not difficult. So the difference between a foundation portfolio and an IYO portfolio, a first year portfolio, is it can be much more playful. It doesn't need this level of sophistication. Important is that you show a range, not just one thing. It's a little bit a shame I had, in fact, somewhere a portfolio example of a foundation portfolio. And yes, I found one. I've got a foundation portfolio. So you see, the student responded exactly to the portfolio guidance. This is a good idea because it's telling me the students really had a look at our webpage. Of course, there's a spelling mistake. That's not a problem. This is a very good pencil drawing. So it tells me that the candidate, despite having not the best skill set yet, really took time and really tried to make a good drawing of the room. This is colorful. It is an attempt of a three-dimensional picture, perspective of a building. It's not very good. It is naive. However, absolutely fine. For foundation, that is absolutely sufficient. I'm not expecting, and once again, I emphasize, it depends on your educational system. If your educational system excluded art and design, let's say from the year 8 onwards or earlier even, then of course, we understand this is tricky to do for candidates. So we are not asking them for producing the most sophisticated work. This is what I do. It shows me a good attention. The candidate clearly can focus. It already shows a range of skills. These paintings are from photographs, rather naive, but colorful, quite lovely, I must say. Then it's getting even more childish because we are getting in this kind of toy world. However, to sum the whole thing up, this is a portfolio which I enjoy. I see a lot of scope in this candidate. It's a candidate who is very young, I think 17, and had obviously not too much input in view to art. Siska, does it answer your question?
Yes, sure, Thomas. Thank you. And I have another question. Is that possible if the student from social in their high school to take the architecture?
I didn't catch it. Could you repeat it, please?
So if during in high school, the student choose social in their high school, so if they want to take architecture, is that possible if they want to choose that major?
Yes, that's not a problem. So you are not bound, so independent of your schooling direction. So whether you had something more related to social skills or sociology, or whether you had anything more science related, that does not matter. The only thing we need is the evidence that there is a passion for architecture. The passion is the trigger. And a passion is something which is lasting. You know, I find it so funny when young candidates write, "When I was little." I find it so cute. You know, they are 17 years old, and in their personal statement, they write, "When I was little" or "when I was a child." You know, they are just grown out being a child. However, the advantage with the courses we offer in comparison to a complete direct entry, where you really say, I don't bother about these courses for internationals, there it's very different. So for us, the evidence of skill, of enthusiasm is more important, I would suggest, than where the student is coming from, what the schooling direction was. And in fact, it can be sometimes a good thing if a student does not come necessarily from an art direction. So yes, students from all sorts of directions, whether it's first year or foundation, absolutely welcome.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
That's all from
Welcome.
my side. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions. Guys, you are all very shy, or I assume that my talk was so awfully comprehensive.
I think it's very thorough.
I tell you
that's
one
why
thing.
Yeah.
In our teaching classes, it is a tricky thing, but we ask students to switch on their cameras. You can imagine that currently we are teaching online. So we have a few students on campus, but the major teaching is happening online. And you can imagine that the teaching experience for both sides, for teacher and students, is so much better when you can see one another. And I demonstrated it to Ibrahim before. So what I do very often in my classes, I just take my mobile camera and I demonstrate then by sketching. That is what I did yesterday. So I have an early workshop. We did an exercise with foundation that was trying to understand a street. So, and these are so I'm doing the exercise myself during this workshop. And I spent about 15 minutes sketching. The students had a bit more time. So it starts with analyzing the footprints and the relationship of the spaces between the buildings. So to look at what shapes are the spaces between the building doing. So we do that 2-dimensionally, and then we do it also 3-dimensionally. And then in the next step, we try to analyze a specific building. So students had to decide, do you love it or do you hate it? But so first asking for your emotional response. And this is an interesting thing, because then you need to ask yourself, why do I love it and why do I hate it? And sometimes it's like people, you know, you think at the first moment, I'm not sure about this person. And then you get to know a person and then you think, oh, it's actually a quite nice person. Despite that, at the beginning, I thought it is not so good. And you've got similar experiences in architecture. Now, this was my favorite building on this street. It is, by the way, the street where our Into Center is, which we are analyzing. And I called this building, this is my lovely old auntie, because it's elegant, it is experienced. So I gave this a title. And I demonstrate with this is what is the creative process with architecture. Even if you analyze it, it is about understanding the story behind it. So this is a building obviously from Victorian times. It is a bit odd because it has these strange French details. You call that eclectic. So it's a bit a hodgepodge of styles. You know, you've got a bit of everything. It's like having a curry with different directions, or a meal, a menu with many different ingredients. However, this is the way how we teach, and we have various platforms, electronics platforms, which we use to make the teaching sessions as practical and lively as possible. So I go back to asking questions. Any questions?
Still no questions, because they are, I think they are shy, or they are overwhelmed
Yeah, no,
with all of the information.
Yeah, okay. Right, so I come to the second part, if that's okay. How are we in view to timekeeping? Do we still have time?
Yes, Thomas,
okay?
we have. You can take your time.
Yes, we have still have time. You can continue.
Okay. So I start the next slideshow. It's the same picture again. Sorry, I try not to get boring. So this is a slideshow which basically starts with why you should study in UK, but I possibly start once again on an earlier one. So why would you study in UK? This is a question which was raised very often. You know, I'm German. I'm a German architect. At the same time, if you would ask me how important is your nationality, yes, it is important, but I feel more like a cosmopolitan. I'm first and foremost a citizen of this planet, so I don't see myself as so specifically German. Anyhow, so I try to take a neutral perspective, and that I stayed in UK. So I moved to UK 13 years ago. almost on the day. You know, it was in October 2007 when I started in UK. So it's just the period where I think, why did I come and why did I stay? So many British colleagues ask me sometimes, you know, Germany is a good country. Why do you stay? Why are you not going back or so? You know, it's a standard question. And I must say there are various reasons. You know, on the one hand, obviously I like the north here in Newcastle, which is very different to the south. But in view to the architecture, I like the open-mindedness and the many options you've got. So, and what we see here are all designs by British architects. So, somebody's testing how to draw with a sketching tool. Very good. We do that with students. It's a fantastic tool on Zoom. So we have these buildings which tell us that there's something about the architecture education in UK which somehow makes a footprint on this planet. So you see some of the famous names. This one is potentially one which is super well known, Foster's and Partners. I think they designed the Beijing airport. There are many other famous architects. David Chipperfield is very successful, in particular in Europe. Yes, he designed recently something in Japan. Terry Farrell, a famous architect, and he is a Newcastle alumni. He just made a huge contribution and a gift towards the university by handing over his personal library and I think £1 million towards the School of Architecture in Newcastle. So there are many other famous names, like Zaha Hadid is one everyone knows almost, Will Alsop, Richard Rogers, James Sterling, and so on. So I could carry on for a while. And even, for example, Reem Koolhaas, another, is a Dutch architect, but studied in UK. So, so this is one aspect. Obviously, there's something in this education which triggers creativity, which has open-mindedness. And I must say, this is the point I enjoy personally. I must say the architecture education in Germany is also very good. But I'm not comparing. I'm only taking what is special. And what I can say, as far as I see it, it is far more personal, the experience you get here. When I think back my study experience, we were 150 students and we shared one professor. So here it's a much better ratio. So we have a much better opportunity to engage with the students, and the students have more out of us. I don't go further into these slides. Now, this island is a strange one, I really must say, because when I traveled to UK 30 years ago, the first time, coming from Germany, it looked to me like a big museum, because you've got so much historic architecture. And you, Ibrahim, in your background, you know, showing Newcastle campus, conveys a bit these Victorian buildings. So all the buildings you see there on Ibrahim's background are buildings which are produced when this little island was in its peak, the Victorian period, where it was an almighty empire. And this, you can feel this in this country, you know. However, it is in view to internationals. I must say, I felt it always welcoming, which is, so as a foreigner, you have an opportunity. It's not shutting you out and so on. And this is not always the case, you know. It's something which you have a feeling for it. So why did I stay? I like this region. So if you go to Newcastle, I'm not a city person. I'm a country boy. So I grew up in the countryside. I grew up in a small town in Germany. Actually, we had my uncle's farm was on our side. So I had to feed pigs in the morning, to let the chickens out and so on. So, however, I also appreciate the city. And now in Newcastle, you've got this combination of countryside and all the amenities and facilities of an important city. It's a small city, but it's a giant in view to importance and in view to the history. And that's really interesting, because Newcastle has only about 300,000 citizens, of which are almost 10% or more are students. However, in view to history, you know, it was a pacemaker in the Industrial Revolution. And because it's so close to the Scottish border, you can imagine in the time when Scotland and England didn't get on well, they always are pickering a bit. So when that was violent, Newcastle was the big city defending England against the Scots. So in view to how it's related, I think from your perspective, I haven't been to Indonesia, but I believe that the distances for you are not long. So it's a 3 hours train journey from London to Newcastle. So you can do a journey to London in 1 day. If you want to see the Parliament or London Bridge or whatever, you can go there and return on the same day. We are much closer to Edinburgh. Edinburgh is only 1 hour by train. So we are more north-oriented than south-oriented. So the cross-section of architecture in this country, you know, you've got this in Germany as well, or many European countries, but you've got this very compact. So because this island has an almost ideal size, you know, it's not too big and not too small. So it's big enough to feel big, but it's small enough that everything is in a short distance. So these are the famous Roman baths in the city of Bath, which are designed and built 1,800 years ago. And now this continuity of good quality architecture through not just a few centuries, but through millennia, is something which is really absolutely inspiring. I mentioned this open-ended process and creativity. I think what I enjoy with UK, and yes, there are similar things in Germany. It's very personal. It's a personal experience. I felt that how I was appreciated in UK, always very welcoming and comforting. So I had a contribution on a few major school projects, and at the time, the foreign secretary bestowed an award on me as a foreigner, as somebody who's not well known. And that was a very positive experience. And it is reflected on how we deal also with students. You see some of our students, that this is already on the master degree level. That this is, his nickname was Alan from Beijing. He has a very good job today. So despite that his degree was only a 2-2 degree, still it helped him to get a really good job in an architectural company. So we have generally, I would say, on the campus in Newcastle, at the School of Architecture, I don't know the exact percentage. I would assume you've got at least 30% international teachers, potentially more, possibly 50% are international teachers from Spain, from Norway, from Finland, from China, all around the world. So now we come to studying architecture. What is the structure? And I'm already talking for a very long time, which gives me always a bad feeling, because I know if somebody's talking for a long time, you are getting tired.
No,
So
it's
hope
okay.
that...
We're enjoying the examples and everything. It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the structure of the studies are still a bit complicated. I try to put it in a diagram which explains it fairly easily. So the foundation is optional. Not everyone needs to do a foundation. However, you need to look at the requirements on the university page. So if you go onto the Newcastle University page and you want to study architecture, you get as an international automatically my program as an entry option. Yet you have a chance to go for direct entry, which has a higher EAP, English requirement, and which has also a higher academic requirement. Newcastle is a quite high-ranking school, and they are quite demanding. Of course, let's say we are in a difficult period, you know, if we are absolutely honest, it is a concern that there remains a good interest of international students. You know, the quality of teaching also depends on an influx of international students. So usually you've got this 3-year degree, and I'm talking about the RIBA accredited course, Royal Institute for British Architects. So this is the route to become an enrolled architect in United Kingdom. Whether this has a lot of relevance or not is a completely different question. Depends on somebody's career, hopes and plans. I say something about it in general at the end. So you've got a 3 years BA degree. So the students you saw before on this celebration slide, now I remember the name of the student. His name was Ryoga, and we are still in contact. He is working currently on an architectural firm designing hotels somewhere on an Indonesian island. Sorry guys, I'm just always glad when my memory manages to retrieve names. Okay, 3 years BA degree, and on this stage, students are at a decision process. So international students very often do the foundation. They can do, let's have a look whether this comes up again. No, oh, sorry about that. So we offer also a first year. So you can enter also almost on a direct level or on a direct level with our international program. And many students after the BA degree decide to go back in their home countries or do a master degree elsewhere. If you continue in UK and you want to become an enrolled architect, then you continue here or with 1 year in practice. What is required for this, you can do this abroad, but it needs to be with an architect who is enrolled in UK, who has an RIBA accredited study. So you need to go into an international firm, basically, then you can do your year in practice abroad. So after this year in practice, this is a requirement of the RIBA route. Theoretically, you can skip this one. Theoretically, you can say, I do my BA and go straight away after that in a master. You can do that as well. However, this is not the RIBA route then. So to continue with the accredited route, after this 1 year in practice, you do a 2 years master degree, and then you have another 2 years in practice. They are often provided by the university. For example, they are integrated. So you are already practicing, you are already in a paid job in this stage, but you still have to provide evidence and give pieces of samples to the university. And at the end of this 2 years period, you have the conclusive final submission of your work, and then you are a fully accredited architect. It is from my perspective, lengthy process. It is a complicated process where you need to decide as an international student, how do you want to plan your career? So from my perspective, and I just showed you Alan from Beijing, he did the master degree, non-accredited master degree, but he's an architect in Beijing. So he did not bother too much with the RIBA accreditation. If my advice would be, if you really want to stay in UK, if you really want to become a citizen in UK, and if that's your career plan, not to go back, and UK is your main aim, then this makes sense. If you plan a wider, a broader career, then I would suggest take this more as a toolkit where you can say, I do my BA in Newcastle and I do my master degree in Hong Kong. I've got very good examples. Otto Chung, one of my favorite students from foundation, we stayed friends basically. He's sending me pictures on WhatsApp and I know what's going on in Hong Kong. Really great. He's working actually with a company I worked for. He's working with Ryder Architecture. And he did not bother with that. He did this BA degree here. He went with a British firm in Hong Kong and he did his master degree in Hong Kong. So these are options. And so what I would suggest if you are an international, not to bother too much about the accreditation. When you work in an architectural firm, your studies matter more in view to the experience and the skills you have, rather than whether they match certain accreditation standards. The accreditation matters then, particularly if you become a senior architect or if you want to have your own practice. So if you say, I want to be my own company, then this matters. If you are an employed architect, then it matters far less. So I think sometimes this whole thing around the RIBA accreditation, from my perspective, is a bit exaggerated, if I'm honest. Okay, so that is the RIBA route. Any questions? I stop for a moment. I have a few more slides. I can stop or I can continue. I don't know. Are there any questions? I see chat. There is, guys. Guys, klo ada pertanyaan isk tulis di sini ayaya.
Hi, Thomas. So it's for all the students here. Okay.
Okay.
I have another question, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, if the student graduate bachelor in Newcastle, so in UK after graduate they eligible for postgraduate working visa, isn't it?
Yes, that is
So,
correct.
Yes, so that's correct. So basically, sorry.
So is it easy to find a job in the architecture firm?
This is a very good question because there comes already one element in, and this is how good you are. So I would suggest the few names I was dotting around, like Ryoga from Jakarta, Otto from Hong Kong. These were all students who were hardworking. They were not perfect, but they were very solid. So if you as an employer get such a portfolio, you don't bother too much where they are from. You see that they are good. And this is the key. It's not the question, what is the percentage? You know, I think very often when I see universities advertising saying, yes, 86% of our graduates are in employment. This is not telling much, if I'm honest. My experience as a practitioner, and I have a broad experience, you know, I worked in German companies, I was self-employed for some time, I worked for a really very good firm in Newcastle. It is an international firm, and we were not so if we needed staff, we looked at the quality of the staff and not so much you know, where and what, and is it accredited? So the key question for a candidate is, can I build up this story that that others appreciate what I am, that others can see this is a candidate I want to have in my team. So I'm not giving you a direct answer. A biggest encouragement is to put your heart and soul in it, to enjoy it, but you need to work. And if you then produce a good portfolio, and Ryoga is a very, very nice example, because it's a shame I have his master degree portfolio somewhere. And it's so touching for me. I still read the same Ryoga as I had in the foundation portfolio. I still see this personality. And with this personality, he got a job. And this is exactly what it's all about, you know, that you build up your personal profile. If this personal profile is strong and demonstrates that you can help a company to perform well, then I would say, yes, there's no issue at all. A brief one on the stage 2 period after the BA degree. There are sometimes hurdles in view to the visa. So if you want to do that in UK, you need to have an architectural firm which has no issue with applying for this visa process. I have a colleague, so Ryder Architecture, the company I worked for, are doing this, for example. They appreciate good, strong students. By the way, Jada, she also is from Indonesia. I'm drawing a wrong picture here. Now you think, oh yes, Indonesian students are the best, and Thomas must have had so many. I had fantastic students from many countries. I want to be fair and honest, but interesting thing is, Jada, so she is, I think, also from Jakarta, and she became good friend with Otto, and they are living now together in Hong Kong, working for the same company, for Ryder Architecture. Ryder Architecture really, their big project in Hong Kong was something you don't want to talk about too much, designing the new police headquarters. As an architect, you have to design many things, including abattoirs and police stations, possibly. Can be interesting. So what I try to do with this story is, this depends a lot on the individual. So if an individual manages to exploit and to make most out of the education, a very good chance to get a good job. However, there are also students who are just swimming a bit and who potentially go in a different direction. So not becoming a practicing architect, possibly going later into sociology or going into, I had one student, she had a job later in an architect's journal. So writing articles about architecture. So it's a range, you know, architecture, the studies do not necessarily need to aim for becoming an architect in the industry. And you can use, it's a very broad subject. So, and this is what I enjoy about UK. You can travel horizontally sometimes between subjects. You see that a bit about my career. You know, I'm a hands-on architect, but I'm now in education. So I traveled somewhat in my own profession. I hope I answered this question. I try to create a fair and honest picture, you know, and so I hope that's helpful.
Okay, I think I have one question. Since now that students planning to come to the UK, because now in the UK we're offering a post-study work visa, and do you think getting a bachelor's degree is already employable in the UK, or would you recommend to go direct to master's degree perhaps to be more, you know, employable and get a job there?
Okay, is it interesting question. I'm just trying to think through examples I'm aware of. So yes, you can work on a BA level, and over time, even that does not hold you back for becoming an enrolled architect. So my former my former team leader, an experienced architect, he was only a BA architect. Now you may ask, how does that work? You know,
Yeah.
how does he become to the title? You know, it's a protected title. You can't just call yourself architect. And so the ARB, the Architects Registration Board, allows for applying. So you need to go through an application process where, based on experience, you can get enrolled. So the study route is one way, but you are not required necessarily to have the RIBA accredited route to do so. Give you another example. We had one Russian student. She did exactly that. So she had a Russian undergraduate degree, and she went through the ARB accreditation process and got her degree accredited so that she could accomplish the whole studies. She went with a master degree. So, and that's very often not known to candidates. You know, it's not a closed route. It is a route, so a route which is completely reliant on the RIBA accreditation. The actual body, and that makes it so awfully complicated. I don't know, UK is a funny country, you know, in this respect, very traditional in many ways. And the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, they are the ones who what's the right word, to verify the education. But the Architects Registration Board, they are the body who decide whether you are an architect or not. So they bestow the title. So the RIBA is awfully important. But last but not least, the ARB is what matters. So if you want to sign off a planning application for a large building, for a hospital or so, you need to be an ARB enrolled architect. So this is, I feel sorry that it's not so super straightforward, but it's part of this country and of the culture, I believe. Okay, is there anything,
loud and clear,
any more questions?
Is there any question from students?
Oh, may I ask one question? So in order for the students to get the title from ARB, do they have to get the RIBA accreditation part 1, part 2, part 3 in order to get the title from ARB?
Yeah, okay, good question. The difference is, so if you are on the RIBA accredited route, you are automatically on the ARB process. So you don't need to have any kind of additional examination. That's the difference. So if you are on these courses with RIBA accreditation, you don't need to have any additional application to get enrolled. So it is, you could say, included in this route. However, if you study courses, for example, you're doing a master degree which has not the accreditation, you still could apply at the Architects Registration Board to get this through this process. The process is actually very transparent and clear. So what the ARB asks you for is you have to submit a portfolio, and in this portfolio you have to verify that you that you fulfilled certain standards and that you are aware of. One example would be, so you need to verify that you know how does the arrangement for fire stairs work. So in your portfolio would say, in my project, third year, in this house type so-and-so, I demonstrated that I know how it works. If it's about other things like, I don't know, for example, disabled access could be another one. So you need to know, it's a requirement that you are aware of the regulations for disabled access. So you would then allocate and say, in my design project in the fourth year, I demonstrated this awareness and included the disabled access. So you have to basically evidence systematically that you fulfill the standards which are necessary to be an architect. That's basically what it does. But it is an open thing, you know, it's not closed. So if you are BA studies and you've got 4 years experience in an architectural firm, you can go through this process and apply directly. I'm not sure about the cost. It's not that expensive. I don't know. It was something £800 or so. I don't know. You can check it on the ARB site, actually. Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have one question here in the chat box. Currently, I'm studying architecture at my university in Jakarta. And if I graduate, can I continue my master there, or I have to start all over again?
No, you can start on the master. One of my programs is a pre-masters, which is often a good idea because it just adjusts you towards the education in UK. But so a clear answer, yes. So you can do your BA. However, there's one little caveat. It may be very difficult to get in the RIBA accredited master course. It's easier to get in non-accredited master course. Once again, doesn't matter that much, if I'm honest. You know, depends on this point. Do you want to stay in UK? How much does it mean to you? And then you can decide. So Newcastle University offers a very interesting toolkit of master degree courses in architecture. So one is the M-Arch, 2 years accredited. Then there's a wide range under the title Advanced Architectural Design, and the course is called Architecture and the Cities. You can do a 1 year, you can do a 2 years, you can even divert into M-Arch. You can go for a property development. So there's a range, a kind of a toolkit where you can decide how you want to structure yourself. You can go for urban design. You could go for landscape architecture. So there's a broad route. And I think for international students, who have a degree, a BA degree, they are in a good position to get into a good course at the moment. So I think the situation is advantageous for international students. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, now it's time for scholarship. Yay!
Yeah.
Okay,
Ibam,
so I'm done.
will you share about the scholarship?
Sure.
Thomas has done his job, like explaining everything about architecture,
Very
IBA, everything, and the portfolio. It was very clear.
Okay.
And now it's your job, Ibrahim.
Am I allowed to leave now? I've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Thomas.
It was nice to
Bye.
meet you.
Have a nice
Stay
day.
safe.
All right.
Masih di mute. Ibam, kamu masih di mute.
Sorry. Okay. Mungkin aku perkenalan dulu. Aku dengan Ibam. Aku perwakilan dari Into Newcastle. Jadi mungkin tadi teman-teman mungkin sempat wondering ya, apa sih International Year One, apa itu foundation. Mungkin aku akan kasih short brief presentation aja, and then aku ngejelasin mengenai scholarships-nya ya. Oke. Udah bisa lihat screen aku? Belum?
Belum, Bang.
Masih
Oke.
loading.
Oke.
Ya, udah.
Oke, jadi Into Newcastle ini kita adalah pathway program di mana memang kalau buat student-student yang mau kuliah di UK, apalagi untuk teman-teman yang masih baru mau S1, kita ada pathway untuk international students yang memang setara dengan tahun pertama atau tadi disebut International Year One. Jadi International Year One itu setara dengan pertama, kalian bisa lulus dalam 3 tahun. Jadi buat teman-teman yang udah kelas 12, kalian bisa langsung masuk ke tahun pertama melalui program International Year One. Secara modul pun juga sama, hanya pembelajarannya aja. International Year One akan belajar di Into Newcastle Building, masih dalam Newcastle University area, gitu ya. Hanya untuk tahun pertamanya aja, untuk sama barengan sama international student semua, baru di tahun kedua gabung sama local students. Jadi pathway kita ada 2 untuk arsitek ya. Jadi teman-teman ada 2 pathway. Kalau masih kelas 11 bisa start dari foundation. Di mana foundation ini sudah fokus, kita ada foundation in architecture juga. Langsung setelah foundation, kalian dapat guarantee progression menuju tahun pertama di Newcastle University untuk program arsitek. Oke, jadi setelah doing foundation, kalian sudah dapat conditional offer dari university. In this case, Newcastle University untuk program arsitek. Oke, dengan foundation kurang lebih waktu jadi 3 tahun 9 bulan. Oke, jadi buat teman-teman yang dari kelas 11 dan mungkin udah tahu mau ambil jurusan arsitek atau mungkin some other majors, bisa start doing foundation. Jadi kalian bisa terfokus dengan jurusan kalian starting from foundation program. Oke, that's a little bit about that. Terus juga scholarships, aku langsung jam into scholarships aja. Jadi memang kalau dari Into kita dan dari Newcastle University kita punya foundation scholarships. Jadi buat teman-teman yang mau ngambil program foundation program, baik itu arsitek atau social science, engineering, science program, kita punya scholarships that up to 100%. Dan especially buat teman-teman mungkin yang decide mau doing foundation di Januari intake, kita ada scholarship sebesar 20.000, di mana 20.000 ini adalah total dari biaya foundation program itu sendiri. Oke, di mana 20.000-nya nanti kalau misal teman-teman dapat scholarship ini akan dibagi menjadi 2, 10.000 di tahun pas lagi kalian doing foundation dan 10.000 ketika kalian masuk ke university. Oke, jadi in total 20.000. Nah, jadi lumayan saving a lot of budget. Jadi foundationnya pretty much free karena untuk program foundation pun juga kurang lebih harganya sekitar 20.000 pound sterling. Oke, memang ini sangat kompetitif di mana teman-teman harus apply dulu, mendapatkan offer letter, baru submit scholarship. Ada form scholarship yang harus diisi dan personal statement, dan form itu sendiri kalian bisa dapetin dari EduBridge juga. Jadi kalian bisa apply melalui EduBridge, lalu dapat offer, lalu kalian bisa apply untuk scholarships-nya. Generally, intake-nya kita memang di bulan September. Tapi untuk kita juga ada intake tambahan di bulan Januari, jadi lebih cepat. Let's say kalian doing foundation di bulan Januari, selama 9 bulan, Januari sampai awal September, di akhir September kalian udah langsung masuk ke tahun pertama. Gitu. Jadi karena untuk academic year di UK kurang lebih 9 sampai 10 bulan saja. Gitu. Itu scholarship yang paling besar yang kita offer untuk international students, dan juga kita ada potongan scholarship in case teman-teman nggak dapat mungkin belum mendapatkan 20.000 foundation scholarships, atau mungkin untuk teman-teman yang mau langsung ngambil international year one, kita ada deductions untuk Januari intake ini sebesar 2.000 pound sterling gitu. Jadi untuk Januari intake mungkin teman-teman mau ngambil program bisnis untuk program bisnis dan juga untuk arsitek, kita juga for scholarships potongan 2.000 pound sterling. Gitu. Mungkin dari aku itu aja, since kita udah makan banyak waktu. Thank you so much everyone. Aku balikan ke Dewi ya.
Oke, thank you Bam. Oke, semuanya sekian untuk hari ini. Ini adalah workshop terakhirnya EduBridge. Karena kita tiap bulan itu kita punya tema masing-masing gitu. Nah, temanya di bulan November itu nanti akan ada apa? Kalian pantengin aja Instagramnya kita. Kita selalu update kok tiap hari. Jadi kalian akan tahu kita ada event apa lagi untuk bulan November, temanya apa. Nah, untuk Newcastle University yang itu, tadi kalian udah dengar ada foundation, ada international year one. Mungkin kalian yang dengerin ini ada yang tertarik architecture, ada juga mungkin yang tertarik di major yang lainnya. Nah, kalian bisa tanya-tanya kita untuk programnya. Misalnya nih kalian dari national curriculum atau dari IB atau A-level, itu sama nggak sih requirement-nya? Pasti beda. Gitu. Bedanya gimana, Kak? Nah, kalian tinggal kontak aja konsultannya kalian, tinggal kasih tahu aja. Nah, kemudian kalau misalnya untuk IELTS, apa segala macam, kembali lagi kontak aja konsultan kalian. Gak usah takut, gak usah malu, chat aja. Gak usah formal-formal banget, tinggal panggil aja, Ci, Kak, Mas, Bang, Koh. Gitu. Kita pasti akan, reply kalian punya chat kok. Selama kita gak tidur ya, sis, kita selalu awake. Selalu pasti balas kalian punya pertanyaan kok. Itu aja so far. Siska ada yang mau ditambahin nggak sebelum kita mengakhiri session ini? Oh ya, Siska yang di Surabaya ya?
Ya, aku EduBridge Surabaya. Nih, aku dapat bocoran. Ibam bakal datang ke Surabaya. Mungkin kalau ada yang mau ketemu langsung sama kakak Ibam, ya kan? Mau, aduh Ibam yang mana sih orangnya, ya kan? Tuh yang ganteng ini nih, ya kan? Jadi bisa langsung kontak aku atau Cek Christine. Ini Ibam datangnya kapan sih? Mau ketemu, mau nanya-nanya gitu kan? Mungkin dia lebih detail gitu ya. Jadi bolehlah langsung cus meluncur. Yes. Atau kalau yang di kota-kota yang lain juga bisa kontak. Soalnya IBAM base di Jakarta. Jadi kalau emang pengen ya kita juga lihat-lihat kondisi kan. Kalau emang IBAM-nya pas visit, ya udah bisa ketemu gitu, ya kan?
Dan kita fleksibel kok. Kalau misalnya kalian nggak bisa datang ke kantornya kita, itu bisa via Zoom juga. Jadi kita akan aturin Zoom meeting juga sama orang sekolahnya, sama IBAM juga. IBAM available kok.
Ya, betul. Jadi maksudnya nggak yang kaku-kaku ya.
Yeah. Iya.
Udah nggak zaman. Di zaman milenial ini kita harus fleksibel, ya nggak?
Benar.
Itu aja sih dari aku. Thank you, Ibam.
Oke deh. Thank you ya, Ibam. Dan semuanya, thank you for listening to our workshop. And then stay tuned for our next event di bulan November. Have a nice long weekend. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Have a nice weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.